Hello there, my name is Dr. Saleem Javed and we are talking about early French cinema. We talked about Georges Méliès, the influence of Georges Méliès on French cinema, and then we talked about how uh, Charles Pathé, who is referred as Napoleon of cinema, started his company by 1896, and how by year 1901 he was able to establish an extensive production facility and became the largest maker of film equipment and raw film stock in Europe, and how he entered in the business of distribution network and cinema theaters across the continent, resulting in the establishing of corporate agents worldwide. Now, this is something amazing. One person starting a company within 10 years, he is able, by the support of substantial financial resources, he was able to establish himself. Now, Pathé Frères, as you can see on your screen, Pathé Frères distribution and production divisions are recognized for their pioneering contributions to film distribution to Australia, Japan, Brazil, and India. Now, this is something which is remarkable about Pathé, that his distribution network was so vast that anybody whosoever was seeing in film for the first time, first decade of 1900 and I'm talking about 1900 and 1910. So there were chances that he for the first time he was seeing the film of Pathé in Australia, Japan, Brazil, or India for that matter. Obviously, our exposure is only hardly 6 months after when we saw Lumiere Brothers 6 films at Hotel Watson in Bombay, but after that, and he was on his way. His agent was on his way. Marius Cesar, who was an agent of Lumiere Brothers, was en route or on his way to Australia when he landed in Bombay. So, Australia, Japan, Brazil, India. So, his network, I mean, this example is to tell you how vast it was in India. Now, because the word India is there, so it is my responsibility to clear some doubt. Okay. Now, as you can see on your screen, that now as far as the arrival of cinema in India is concerned, when you read books which deals with history of cinema in India, you must have read about 7th of July 1896 at the Watson Hotel in Mumbai. Lumiere Brothers showcased 6 films. You must have come across this point in some book. Now, this is a deliberate effort to put it here because I am talking about Pathé. Why am I talking about Hotel Watson in Bombay? Now this is something which is the responsibility of a teacher. Sometimes any information which is not well checked, technically misinformation becomes a fact. Now, there is a factual mistake what I just read, which need to be cleared, and it is that Lumiere Brothers never came to India. Okay. I mean, it is a mistake in many books. Lumiere Brothers, Augustus and Louis Lumiere, 2 brothers, Augustus and Louis Lumiere, they have never ever came to India. Their films came to India. There is no doubt about it. But they in person never were in, they never came to India, especially this particular date, which is called 7th of July 1896. On 7th of July 1896, neither Augustus Lumiere and Georges Méliès, none of them were, both of them were not here. Now, interestingly, I happened to attend a seminar. He was there, a very senior film journalist was there, and he started talking about how the cinema started, and he came up with a very wonderful story that Japanese abducted one of the brothers, one of the Lumiere brothers, and then they took him. I think they mixed two stories. Something similar to this happened between South Korea and North Korea. There is no doubt about that. When the celebrity couple was kidnapped by North Korea, and they were forced to make, because Kim Jong father was a great film lover, so he kidnapped them from South Korea and brought in North Korea and asked them to make films. That is a different story, but that sort of thing did not happen in context of Lumiere brothers. As far as India is concerned, it is not the case. Now, so the person who brought Lumiere brothers film in India was Marius Cesare. That is something that you should remember. He was like a film enthusiast who was working with Lumiere brothers, and on his way to Australia, Marius Cesare got these films, and he showed first in Bombay, then in Calcutta, and then he made his way to Australia. So our exposure is slightly few months earlier than Australia. Australia saw films after us. So a lot of Indians who are going to Australia, and they must remember this point. It's a joke, please. But they saw film after us. There is no doubt about it. Now, as you can see on your screen, which says that what makes Charles Pathé unique, and one of the main reasons for his survival even till date, is that unlike MPPC, Motion Picture Patents Company, Charles Pathé did not completely eradicate his competitors. I mean, as a student now, when I read this, as a teacher when I read this, as a student when I read this, I mean, ये बड़े मयार की बात है. It's of a great character that you can kill your enemy, but you don't. I mean, not enemy, competitor. Because you let him, if you die, if you kill him, there is no fun in the game. So when you see old films where bigger than characters bigger than life, तो मतलब मुझे दुश्मन भी खानदानी चाहिए, that sort of a feeling. So Charles Pathé, what make him unique is Charles Pathé did not completely eradicate his competitors. Instead, now which is surprising, instead he and the Star Film Company means George Méliès, established the Continental Division. When I was talking about George Méliès as a person, I know that Pathé has been painted as a villain, but look at here, that what makes him unique, that Charles Pathé did not completely eradicate his competitors. And in this case, Charles Pathé and Star Film Company established the Continental Division. Now, if he has been so calculative, and George Méliès being so creative, now this is an equation which I am not able to grasp even today. Obviously, because a lot of thing has not been written, maybe one of the reasons, and I have been reading old books, please understand. One of the things that, had he been so benevolent, George Méliès being so creative, even then why this relationship did not work? Now, see the point and understand, try to understand. It is not about films anymore, please understand. It's about business. It's about, there is a way of saying that if you know your history, it can be about your discipline, it can be about your nation also for that matter. If you know the history, and if you have understood it in a right perspective, then nation or the company or the individual is bound to grow by learning from those mistakes. Now, in 1908, Pathé distributed, now look at this point. In 1908, Pathé distributed twice as many pictures in the United States as all American production companies combined. And by 1909, the same scenario prevailed in Great Britain. You think of Pathé's licensing, liaison. Licensing is in English. Now, by 1908, up till 1914, if I am talking about Charles Pathé or Pathé Frères, then you understand without it goes without saying that he has no competition in any of the film industry anywhere in the world. And 1914 especially, why? Because the First World started. Obviously, then they slightly went down, they lost some resources, then they picked up after the First World War again, then started rising, and then they had a great loss in the Second World War, and then after that they rise again. But up till 1940, can you imagine somebody beating Hollywood in Hollywood, and he's a French company, and it is a French company. I mean, see it again on your screen. It says in 1908, Pathé distributed twice as many pictures in the United States as all American production companies combined. And by 1909, the same scenario prevailed in Great Britain. Something mind blowing information. This is absolutely mind blowing information. Now, Pathé garnered profit ranging from 5,000 to 10,000%. I mean, if you show this particular slide to any film producer today anywhere in the world, he will scratch his head off. 5,000 to 10,000% profit range, facilitating its acquisition of the Star Film Company in 1908. Star Film Company means George Méliès, and establishing itself as the Méliès distributor for several tumultuous years until 1913, after which the alchemist of light completely forsook his alchemy altogether. This is particular line I have taken from that slide which I was when I was talking about George Méliès exclusively. The alchemist of life completely abandoned or forsook his alchemy altogether. That particular episode was poetic in nature. So that's why this particular lines are so poetic. Now, think of any producer in the world, any film production company in the world, or for that matter, any company into services or goods making or supply, export, import, 5,000 to 10,000% profit range. 5,000 to 10,000%. यहाँ तो लोग 100% पे कूद जाते हैं. Think of 5,000 to 10,000% profit range, and that was the case with Pathé. They garnered this range of profit. That's why they were into so many things. Now, the Director General of Pathé was Ferdinand Zika. Now, this is something, after Charles Pathé, he is the second name that you are hearing. The Director General of Pathé was Ferdinand Zika. A former, now again, look at the profile, and that is what I miss most today in 2025. a former music hall singer whose astute understanding of audience preferences significantly contributed to his employer's substantial financial success. Is he an actor? I mean, was he an actor? No. Was he a producer? No. Was he a composer? No. He was, technically very at a very low level in the hierarchy. He is just a, not even a singer, he is a former music hall singer. So, very low in hierarchy. Charles Pathé started the company 1896, and after Charles Pathé, the second name that you are listening to is Ferdinand Zika. Now, who is this guy? He is somebody, he has got one quality. Ferdinand Zika has got one quality. What is his quality? He understands audience preferences. Only this quality. And what it did, it significantly contributed to his employer's substantial financial success. Now, it means what? Ferdinand Zika, and then I'll talk about one more person. I mean, technically, he is the CEO in modern term language for Pathé, the first CEO, Ferdinand Zika. Now, what does it mean that I know, I understand the audience preference? Now, I was watching one Yash Chopra's interview. Must have been taken somewhere around 2002 or 2003. He was talking about the same thing, and how as a company they have been able to survive, and why Yash Raj Production became Yash Raj Production, and what is it that they understand, what a lot of production companies along with them started, vanished, and everything. So, what they had, what they have, with what they started. So, when I read about Ferdinand Zika quite late, and I watched that interview when I was in college, and I saw that interview. And in that interview, they were talking about that they were shooting in some hill station, and what Yash Raj ji was worried about, कि उस location तक मेरा generator कैसे जाएगा. So that is what he was worried about, because he was a very disciplined man. So वहाँ उस लोकेशन पे जनरेटर लेके जाना है, एंड देन कैसे जाएगा, मेरा क्रू कैसे जाएगा, एंड व्हाट वी विल बी डूइंग देयर, that was the speciality. That much minute detailing was in his mind. So he was not only a producer, he was a great director also. Obviously some people can argue about it, but that is the personal choice that people have. But when I was reading about Ferdinand Zika, I was thinking of him only, and this astute understanding of audience preferences is what made him so great. Now, similar to Méliès, now please, it's Méliès, Méliès, no, it's not Méliès, it's Méliès. Zika focused on narrative film and was well versed in magician's cinematic technique. Yet, in the majority of his work, Zika deviated from the Méliès legacy of film theatre by utilizing outdoor setting and occasional rotating his camera to track to the action. Now, technically, Zika in this particular context that I just read is far more progressive than Méliès. Obviously, no, be that Charles Pathé, be that Ferdinand Zika, a lot of people do not know about these people. Forget that they know the importance of these people, they do not know these people. If I talk about if I say in my class about George Méliès, I expect some people know George Méliès, but if I say Pathé, 99% possibilities that nobody knows about him, and 1000% possibility that nobody knows about Ferdinand Zika. But still, when you look, when you see this slide, similar to Méliès, Zika focused on narrative film and was well versed in the magician cinematic technique. Yet, in the majority of his work, Zika deviated from Méliès's legacy of film theatre by utilizing outdoor setting and occasionally rotating his camera to track the action. Today, if you show this particular slide to any film student, he will prefer Zika more than George Méliès. I mean, you must be getting confused that Saleem sir, you say that George Méliès is here, Charles Pathé is here, but again you are saying that if you see this particular slide, then George Méliès is here and Zika is here, you know. So that depends on the context who is where. Now, Méliès has the greatest influence on France, on Paris, on French film industry, a very dominating, a very prominent effect on other film industries across the world. That's why we know George Méliès for. But the same style became his shackles. The stablo mentality that people accuse him with, that I often quote this, but technically Zika is not that tableau mentality individual in terms of when it comes to making films. So technically, when I'll be talking about other The Last Laugh, when I'll be talking about these films, German films, Unchained Camera terms and all these, The Last Laugh, when I'll be talking about that particular film, then German, French, they were seeing their films, and Unchained cinema concept is related to The Last Laugh. But look what Zika is doing it here, and he was not fixed in the theater mentality. He was he was already doing outdoor shooting. Now his initial films were realistic, one-reel melodramas depicting the lower class, such as L'Historia du Crime and the La Victime, the Les Victimes de Alcoholism, the victim of alcoholism in 1982, and 1901 this La Historia d'un Crime. And however, he subsequently emerged as a master of various genres, including historical romance, fantasy, farce, religious spectacle, and the pinnacle of popular actualité reconstituée or reconstructed newsreels, which were pioneered by George Méliès himself. So he is somewhere near George Méliès. George Méliès' style was one focused style, and Zika was meandering around, and he was good with a lot of genres, be that historical romance, farce, fantasy, religious spectacle, and obviously this reconstructed news reels. I mean, do you connect with reconstructed news reels in today's journalism, pioneered by Méliès? This is something really interesting. Additionally, drawing inspiration from the chase films of England's Brighton School. Now, this is something really interesting. I talked about Brighton School in my past lectures. Zika created a distinctive Gaelic version known as cours comique. Cours comique, comics, comic, वहीं से comedic वहीं से आया है, comic, which is called comic chase, which integrated parallel action editing with trick cinematography, reminiscent of Méliès' to elicit amusement rather than suspense. I would really like you to see this slide again and read it and give yourself some time to absorb what has been written, what is Gallic version, what is Brighton School, what is integrated parallel action editing, why it is used with trick cinematography, which is reminiscent of Méliès to elicit amusement rather than the suspense. What does it all mean? How it is achieved? How Zika is able to do all of it, which is technically exactly poles apart from George Méliès's stand. What George Méliès, like think of that George Méliès is mixing two colors and creating a third color. Zika is exactly mixing the same color, means same technique, but eliciting amusement rather than suspense. And George Méliès is creating suspense and Zika is creating amusement, whereas they are using the same parallel action editing with trick cinematography. That is these are the two colors. How is it possible? Same two colors, one is giving the effect of amusement and other is giving the effect of suspense. That is what the basic difference when it comes to George Méliès and Ferdinand Zika, when it comes to George Méliès's creativity and when it comes to Pathé's management. And this is how these two great individuals are placed next to each other. One is known, the other is unknown. One is celebrated, later forgotten. The other is entirely forgotten but later on celebrated. Look at this cross. We hope to discuss it more. Thank you very much.